Each year, you see him in his natural habitat. The beleaguered husband, the bewildered husband, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock, Christmas Eve, wandering aimlessly, helplessly, desperately in the shops, and on his face he wears the bitter look of regret. Why didn't he start his Christmas shopping earlier? What will I get for her? What is she like? I don't know. What does she need? What's in the bargain basement reduced price bucket? I am willing to confess I have on occasion been that husband, although this year I am both pleased and smug to say that I bought Morag's present several weeks ago now, although that's only because she dropped the most monumentally obvious of hints. She's learned that subtlety is not the way ahead when it comes to me. I was, though, reading about some monumental errors made in Christmas gift buying. For example, here is Paul from South Wales. He bought his wife some anti-wrinkle cream for Christmas. Paul's wife is 27. Then there's Denise from Swindon. One year she got the special gift from her new sister-in-law. She was bought de-icer for the car, which I reckon got a frosty reception. Is that all? I worked on that for ages. I did hear about one husband who went to buy his wife flowers, but of course it was Christmas Eve and both the petrol stations and the supermarkets were fresh out of flowers. And so, looking around in a blind panic for the next best thing, in place of flowers, he bought his wife a bunch of celery. I reckon you can picture the guy's logic, right? It's green, it grows, you might even get a kind of leaf. It's basically flowers, right? I am not an expert gift giver, but there is one thing I have learned. The best gifts of all meet 2 criteria. The best gifts of all are thoughtfully given because they are firstly something the person really wants, and secondly, even better, something they really need. So if you can hit that sweet spot for your nearest and dearest at this time of the year, something they really want and something they really need, I reckon you have nailed it. But I say that because the gift that God gives you at Christmas time is a gift just like that. Something you want and something you need. We often hear that kind of talk, don't we, this time of the year? You know, people will say, oh, Christmas is the greatest story ever told, or, you know, Jesus is the greatest gift ever given. Have you heard that? I reckon most of us have. I also reckon that those words sound pretty meaningless to most people. You know, what do you mean Jesus is a gift? What do you mean he's God's gift to me? Like, what do I need with Jesus? Well, I'm only going to speak for a few minutes. In those few minutes, I want to try and show you, in fact, I want to try and persuade you that Jesus is actually the gift that deep down we all really want, and more than that, all really need. There have been a whole series of stories in the news this year about something called a quiet revival of people going back to church and expressing interest in the Christian faith. Maybe you are one of them. We have certainly seen lots of folk like that in our 2 churches over this last year. Somehow, something in the world around us seems to be stirring. Maybe the world seems more uncertain than it has. Maybe people have had enough of the idea of a godless, meaningless universe. Maybe they've come to see just how bleak that actually is. Whatever the reason, many people, and especially young people, seem to be walking back through the doors of churches, turning up out of the blue, wanting to know more. There's a lot of talk about us living in a post-truth culture. And in a world where, I don't know, maybe we feel we can't trust the media or social media or, the algorithms that serve up your Instagram newsfeed. or the politicians, in a world where truth seems increasingly hard to grasp, we find ourselves, I think, wanting to know what really is true. Wanting a firm place to stand. We want to know true stuff, don't we, about life and God and who we are and where we come from and what our life is all about. Well, into all of that want, did you hear what our first Bible reading said about Jesus? It said that Jesus came from the Father, from God, full of grace and truth. The Word became flesh. He came from the Father, full of grace and truth. So the story of Christmas says, if you really want truth about life and purpose in life, come to me, says Jesus. Speaking of purpose, that's the other big vacuum, isn't it, in our world? So many of us have been taught, maybe by our parents' generation or by a secular media, that this is a godless universe, that science has done away with God, which, by the way, is complete nonsense. Some of the most able scientists in the world are men and women of Christian faith. But if this is a godless universe, the truth is it's also a purposeless universe. Because if you and I have no maker, no designer, the truth is we're actually just a random accident, and our lives can have no objective meaning at all. And if it were true, that would be a depressing thought, wouldn't it? In fact, is it any wonder that all the stats tell us we are more depressed and more anxious than ever? Instead, don't we want the joy of knowing purpose in life? Don't we want the joy in place of the sadness of knowing who made us and why we're here? Well, again, into that want, just listen to the Christmas story. Remember what was announced to those unsuspecting shepherds on the Bethlehem hillside? Remember this? Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all people. So, do you want the joy of knowing what life is actually all about? Jesus says, come to me. I guess there's so much more we want in life, but let me just give you one more. We all want help and guidance, don't we? Life feels always more complicated, difficult, challenging. I don't know about you, but I feel like I need a helper and a guide. And these days, we scroll on our news feeds through endless video clips and endless podcasters telling us how to live our best life. Everything from skincare routines to child behavior management, diet and fitness, and where to flee if World War III breaks out. Apparently it's New Zealand, so build your bunker there, folks. The point is there are more and more voices telling you more and more things about how to navigate life. We want and we need a guide. Well, again, into that want, just listen to the Christmas message speak. Do you remember this from our reading in the book of Isaiah? For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called, do you see it there? Wonderful Counselor. Again, I don't know about you, but I feel like I need a wonderful counselor. And here's the thing, why is it that Jesus is the only reliable guide for life in this world? Well, because he gave you life and made this world. That's how the reading goes on. He's the mighty God, the everlasting Father. In other words, can you see that all the stuff that I think we actually want, whether it's truth or purpose or guidance or help or hope or joy, Jesus claims is actually all found in him. So can I put it to you boldly tonight that I think that he is actually the one that deep down we all want? But there's actually more to it than that. It's actually deeper than that. See, Jesus is not only the gift that meets our greatest wants. More significantly, he's actually the one we all really need. Just go back for a moment to those shepherds on a hillside. Remember what they were told? Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. A Savior has been born. But here's the biggest question. Why on earth is that good news? Why on earth do you need a Savior? And by the way, it's not just a kind of isolated incident. Talk of Jesus being the Savior is all over the Gospels and all over these accounts of the first Christmas. For example, when another angel appears to the somewhat bewildered Joseph, he gets told, Mary will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. Well, there it is, you see. Can I say this to you bluntly without you taking offense? You need a Savior because you are a sinner. And you're not the only one, by the way. I'm no different. I need a Savior because I am a sinner. Think of it this way. Why is Jesus the wonderful counselor? Well, because he's God. Why can he bring us the purpose that we want? Well, because he's our maker. He knows how life works. Why can he bring us truth? Well, because he's the source of all truth. But sometimes the truth Jesus brings us is uncomfortable. And here is the uncomfortable truth that Jesus speaks. Because he is our maker, you and I ought to worship him and listen to him and love him and obey him because that's what's right and because that's how life works best. But the uncomfortable truth is that is not what any of us have done. Instead, isn't it true of you? I know it's true of me. I want to live my life, my way, my rules. And the Bible calls that sin, and sin is deadly serious. God cannot and will not just sort of brush sin under the carpet as if it hadn't happened, as if we hadn't done it. After all, God is perfectly just, if he's God at all. If you saw a judge in a courtroom doing that, sweeping away the evidence, you would call him or her corrupt, and you'd be right. God is not corrupt, he's just, but here's the thing, that gives us a problem. What am I going to do with my sin? And what are you going to do with yours? If nothing can be done about our sin, we will simply face death and God's judgment. There's no way to sugarcoat it. That is the bad news. It is very bad news. But here's the thing. You've got to understand the bad news if you're really going to get why Christmas is good news. Why would we need a Savior if nothing was wrong? Remember what the shepherds were told? Good news of great joy for all the people today. A Savior has been born. Or Joseph, he's told, give him the name Jesus. He's the one who's come to do something about our sin. And so as Jesus is born that first Christmas, the Son of God steps down from the glories of heaven to the muck and the mess of earth. The infant king, there in a stable in a manger. Not to give us a cute story, not even to give us an interesting story or some helpful moral advice. No, it's actually much better than that. It's actually about what we really want and what we deeply need. Jesus came to save you from your sin and to save me from mine. And how does he do it? He dies. He dies because Christmas leads to Easter. He dies because the cradle leads to the cross. Jesus is born to die, and when he dies on that cross, he is taking on himself the punishment, the penalty. He is paying our debt. so that God can remain just as he must, and so that God in his love can find a way for our sin to be paid for, so we can be forgiven. And so far from being cut off from God and experiencing God's judgment, we can be reconnected to the God who made us and the God we were made to know. In this life, now, and in the next, in eternity. Are you ready for eternity? I'm not sure if you noticed, but we've actually been singing about this in our carols all evening. Remember this? O come, true branch of Jesse, free your children from this tyranny of sin, from depths of hell, your people save, to rise victorious from the grave. Or what about this? No more let sins and sorrows grow, nor thorns infest the ground. He comes to make his blessings flow whenever guilt is found. I got to be honest, there is plenty of guilt to be found in me. And if you're going to be honest, plenty in you as well. But Jesus comes to deal with that. But only if we'll let him. Let me tell you about something that has never happened in our house on Christmas morning. Most of you will know we have 5 kids, so it is not a place of peace and serenity at any time, let alone on Christmas Day. But here's something that has never happened. We have never once given the kids their presents, held them out, and had them reply, "Oh, no thanks, Mum. No thanks, Dad. I think I've got enough. I'm all right this year." Now, maybe that happens in your house, but I reckon it doesn't. If there's one thing kids are good at, it is accepting gifts. Adults, on the other hand, are less good at accepting gifts. And if you don't believe me, just go out for dinner with someone and observe the fight over who pays the bill at the end of the night. And yet Jesus says, all I have done for you, my life, my death in your place for your sin, all of it is like a gift. Everything is done, everything is prepared, and Jesus holds it out to us. But if we want it, we still have to say yes. Otherwise, the gift just goes unreceived and our sin goes undealt with. One husband went out to buy his wife flowers and came back with celery. This Christmas, don't be that guy. The best gift for your spouse or friend or whoever is the thing that they really want and really need. But here's the thing, what do you and I really want and need? It's peace and purpose, isn't it? It's truth in a world of confusion, isn't it? And we need, above all, to have the guilt of our sin dealt with. All of this is given to us in Jesus, but only if we'll come to him and receive it from him. Let me say thank you for listening. If all of this is true, and I have become completely convinced it is the most important news in the world. Maybe I can put it this way. At very least, do you not think this bears further exploration? In which case, let me say a couple of things to you. First of all, come back and join us in church on Sundays. You'll see the times on the back of your service sheet. We're here. We do this every week. I don't know if you know. Please come and join us. We always have folks with us who are just looking into the Christian faith for the first time. But more specifically, I want to point you to an opportunity in January. I'm going to start in mid to late January. Something called the 3-2-1 course. It is a 4-week course in a small group with some great video content and some group discussion. It's an opportunity to explore the message of Jesus, the news of the Bible, to see what you make of it for yourself. I'll be there. I'll be leading the discussion. Don't let that put you off. We'd love to have you join us. Here's a very quick video clip to give you a flavor of that course.
Picture this.